I've been an obsessive horror fan my whole life, and every single year a list comes out of the best 15 horror movies of the year. And every year I pick through that list and I watch them all, and some of them usually aren't as good as they pretend to be in that list. But I'm going to pick my favorites that have just slipped by the radar. These are things that not everybody knows about, that I think are really underrated, that should be classics. Just slip through the cracks, and maybe you don't know about them. Maybe you do. Maybe you're bigger horror fan than I am, which means you watch a lot of horror movies with your free time, and good for you. But so if you have a list, if you have suggestions, please put them in the comments below. I'd love to check your list and watch some of those. Here's mine. We have The Dark and the Wicked. This came out just during COVID, and so I don't think a lot of people saw it. This is by Brett Bartino, who created The Strangers and has made a bunch of other horror movies. And I think this is his best movie. I think I don't know why no one seems to watch this thing or love it the way I do, but for me it was like, it's actually one of the few horror movies that actually scares me. I'm one of those people who love horror. Huge horror fanatic, and almost nothing scares me ever. I just like the action of watching a horror movie, and this one actually terrified me. So the plot is this an elderly man is dying, and his son and daughter move back home to take care of him after the mother commits suicide, sort of motivated by some sort of demonic force. And you just get a sense that there's some evil presence lurking over him that is going to destroy him. But it just has some very genuinely frightening moments and an overall feeling of dread that just makes this really horrifying and a perfect watch. I highly recommend it.
Do you smell him? He's close now.
The next movie on this list is called Eden Lake. And this stars Michael Fassbender. And it's basically a very realistic, tragic story of this couple that goes on vacation in this English countryside, somewhere, where there's lots of like white trash folk. I don't know what you call white trash people in England, but whatever they are, that's where we are. We're in like white trash United Kingdom. And they stumble across a bunch of teenagers, and through a series of circumstances, they get in conflict with these teenagers. The teenagers start hunting them down and trying to kill them. What I love about Eden Lake, what makes it so frightening, is how realistic it feels, how you can imagine this happening, and how the teenagers feel like real people. And, the fear comes from just these sort of trashy asshole teenagers, but you almost at some points understand how it all went down, and you can even see why the teenagers are trying to kill this couple. So it ratchets in tension as we go through. It's one of those tight movies. It just takes place in the course of a few hours over the course of one night, and in a forest near a lake, and it has an absolutely knockout ending. So Eden Lake, highly recommend it. Not for Michael Fassbender, because he's not really that much in it, but great movie. The next is a movie that I discovered a few years back and sort of accidentally stumbled upon. It's called The Signal. If you want something different, I think all of us are super horror fanatic people, right? We just devour it all, and we love it, and we see a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the things that are very repetitive. They just feel like we're seeing the same movie over and over again. And this is one you will not feel like you've ever seen before. And I think that's what's so fantastic about it. Now, it's directed by 3 directors. And that's what's something really interesting about this movie. It's really 3 movies, 3 different directors. A very low budget movie, but very well produced, with some really good gore effects, car crashes. They stage a post-apocalyptic world with basically next to no money. And the directors have gone on to do a lot of things here. David Bruckner is one of the directors. He went on to do the remake of Hellraiser. Jacob Gentry is another one. And it stars A.J. Bowen, who you probably seen in a horror movie or two. He showed up in You're Next as the awful boyfriend. And in this, he's the awful husband, right? So what the signal is, and why I love this movie so much, is it's a signal comes across the television screen and infects the brains of anybody who sees it or hears it, and then they go on a killing rampage.
Did you get crazy in your head? How am I supposed to know? Tell me.
It amps up your jealousy, your fear, your resentments, and you just become a killer. So it's got a zombie apocalypse feel to it, but they're not zombies. They're smart. They are functioning and remembering their life. They're conscious, and so far more dangerous. But what's really fascinating about this movie is actually the three different directors take three different segments. And each segment is not only a different movie, but a different style of movie even, right? So the first movie is like a zombie apocalypse movie. The second movie is a flat out dark comedy, just like pitch black comedy, something like Heathers, or something really brutal and biting.
You killed Laura!
She was heading straight for you with that knife.
She doesn't have a knife!
That's a keychain.
And the last one is like a post-apocalyptic romance, right? So there's three movies, three different tones, and you think that wouldn't work, and I guess some critics that it didn't work for them, but what it worked for me is that the way the signal infects your brain, it actually makes sense that you would have, so we're seeing it through three different protagonists' eyes. Each protagonist is infected with the signal and therefore has a different tone and affect in their performance, which makes the movie really work. The middle sequence is the best. It's the black comedy sequence, which takes place at a party. It gets pretty brutal and pretty funny, and there's a really great comic performance by this guy.
That ball drops, I'm going to grab a slut and I'm just going to pee in her butt.
And just check it out, The Signal. Okay, so next movie is one that really blew me away, from a great horror director, Lucky McKee, who you may know from the movie May, which I think is kind of a horror classic. Is it? I don't know. If you've heard May, you can see May. But going past May, we're going to talk about a lesser known one of his movies called The Woman. This stars Pollyanna McIntosh, who's this giant model, beautiful woman, big, powerful, but beautiful woman. And it's actually a sequel to the movie called Offspring, which is about a group of cannibal people that live, and there's sort of feral cannibal people that live in the woods that invade a family home and take a baby. And this is like a sequel. Both were books by Jack Ketchum. That is, I think the Woman book and movie came out at the same time. The Offspring, though, is an older movie, and Pollyanna McIntosh recreates her role as sort of the leader of these feral people. This dad finds her bathing in the woods and kidnaps her and takes her in to sort of civilize her. So he brings her into his basement, he locks her up, and he basically with the idea that he's going to like help her or something, but he gets his whole family into it. And we just get the sense that this man is, as much as the Pollyanna McIntosh's woman is a monster, this man is a far worse monster than anything we've seen here.
What are we gonna do with her?
We're gonna help her. We're gonna train her, civilize her, free her from herself, from her baser instincts.
It's an absolute knockout cast too. It's got Sean Bridgers as the father, probably my favorite performance in the movie, and he is just nailing it with this just bizarre psycho 50s style dad. Pollyanna McIntosh as the woman, and and also Angela Bettis, who was in May as a housewife that's beaten down, and also stars Lauren Ashley, who's somewhat of a horror icon herself, has been in 50 horror movies, including Jugface. So if you like any of her work or any of those people, just see this movie. Again, it's got so many twists, so dark and twisted, so brutal. You'll love it.
Do we really get to keep her?
We do.
One of the other reasons I love it so much is the writer of it, Dallas Myers, aka Jack Ketchum, as he is known. His pen name, wrote it, and that leads us into our next one, because this is one maybe you do know about, but I do think is worth talking about, as I think it is, for me, a classic. It affected me so much, I've never stopped thinking about it, and just even the sight of the DVD case, or even the sight of the poster, just sends chills down my spine. It just bothered me so much. And that is called The Girl Next Door. This is not the the sexy comedy with Alicia Cuthbert from the 2000 era, or whatever the hell it was. This is the very disturbing, semi-based on a true story, that is the Sylvia Likens story. So this is a true story about a girl who was sort of left with a neighbor when her parents had to go and do some work. They just left her with a neighbor and paid the neighbor to take care of her. Instead of taking care of her, though, what the neighbor did is beat her, tortured her, put cigarettes out on her, locked her in the basement, and got all the neighborhood kids to come in and take turns beating on her. It's an absolutely... So this one's not for everybody. This is if you like the disturbing, the really horrifying, disturbing shit. This is for you. But if you don't, yeah, maybe you can skip past this one and go to the next. But if you are open to that kind of experience, I do think this is one of those where there are times when you watch something like a Serbian film and you're just disgusted and you want to vomit at the end. You're like, why did I spend my time watching that? But there's something about this one that feels authentic in its hatred of the evil, monstrous character and the evils that were done to this poor girl. There seems to be a sense. I read the book and I watched the movie, and in both were very effective, very disturbing. But in both, you get a sense of Dallas Myers, aka Jack Ketchum's, understanding of true evil. He seems that he understands it for some reason. Maybe he experienced it in his own life and is very angry about it. And so, as an exploration of true evil, it is really interesting. I also say that an iconic horror performance by Blanche Baker. She is pitch perfect evil and very disturbing. And believable as this absolutely monstrous woman who did exist, really. This is based on a real person who did these things.
It could be your little sister hanging here instead of you. You just think about that.
And so an unsettling experience, but amazing and worth a watch. And let's get away from all that, like real disturbing, make you uncomfortable kind of horror, and go to something that's just actually fun. And this is called The Battery. This is by writer-director Jeremy Gardner. It was also made for a very small budget. Jeremy Gardner directed it, stars in it, wrote it. And it's basically about these two guys who are stuck in the zombie apocalypse and they just hate each other. Right? They just hate each other. Jeremy Gardner's character is just absolutely obnoxious. I think they're part of a baseball team, which is where the Battery, I guess it's a baseball reference. I don't know. I don't follow baseball. But before the apocalypse, they're on a baseball team and they didn't really like each other. And now the apocalypse has happened and they're stuck together. And the other guy really hates Jeremy Gardner's character. So it's just about these two guys going through the zombie apocalypse and this just strung together, but they do not like each other, do not really get along, and it's very funny. And so if you want, it's something along the lines of the Evil Dead or Shaun of the Dead or that kind of horror comedy, or I think Dale and Tucker versus Evil is another great horror comedy. This stands out and should be thought of next to those movies. It's just a very funny, original new voice, and now Jeremy Gardner's gone on to make a bunch of other movies and acted a few. So check it out. It's The Battery. It has one of the funniest masturbation scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I guess, are there other funny masturbation scenes? Yeah, most of the time they're all funny. The next is we're going to go to France for the next one, okay? And if you're probably aware, the French make some of the most absolutely disgusting and nauseating horror around. And they're just insanely gory to the nth degree. And that's why I love them. So this movie's called Inside. And it stars Beatrice Dalle, who is a famous French actress. But she is a woman who's lost her baby, and it's also one of those like bottle movies that takes place over the course of one night in a house. And this woman is pregnant. She's had a miscarriage with the first kid, and she's like 8 months pregnant or something, and tummy full. Beatrice Dalle shows up at her door and knocks on the door and says, "Hey, you got my baby inside of you, and I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna take it out of you." And that's what it is about. That is the whole movie, and it is absolutely terrifying. And again, just an incredible performance by Beatrice Dalle. I'm probably saying her name wrong. Just a new horror villain that stands up with some of the greats. Again, this is not for you if you do not love gore and nastiness and the real disturbing shit. Okay, some of the others on the list, you go watch those. This is for those people who like that kind of thing. But it also is a good film. I think it's one of those things that, even though it does go to absolute extremes, it stands out. It stands there with things like Martyrs or Frontier, where it's absolutely as nasty as movies can be, but it's also actually good. I think there's something there to explore. Okay, now the next one, we're going to go way back. And this is a movie I saw. I have it on Laserdisc. Okay, not going to do me any good anymore, but I have it on Laserdisc. And this is called The Reflecting Skin. And this is basically the first movie I ever saw Viggo Mortensen in. This is before Lord of the Rings. This is, I think, somewhere in the early 90s it came out, and really was not widely seen or widely known about. And it had a really interesting Laserdisc cover, and I remember buying it for that. It's also one of the best movies about childhood I've ever seen. And it's all told through the eyes of a little boy who is Viggo Mortensen's younger brother. And Viggo Mortensen comes back from the war, and he's got a girlfriend. However, the problem with this is that the girlfriend is a vampire, or at least the little boy is pretty sure she's a vampire. And this is where it gets really interesting, and it plays with, I think, themes about childhood. It's one of the best movies about childhood I've ever seen. It just captures that way. Like when you're just a kid, you just don't know anything about the world, and everything is mysterious. And so this kid is consumed with the idea that his brother, who he loves more than anything, is gonna, marry a vampire, and undertakes task to do something about it. So it's called The Reflecting Skin. Highly recommend that one.
Tell me, how old do you think I am?
50.
Oh, no, I'm older than that. I'm 200 years old.
The last one on the list is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, with one of the greatest performances in a horror movie. I think this stands up there with Robert Englund as one of the great over-the-top monster villains. And this is called The Loved Ones. Stars Robin McLeavy, who I've not seen in a ton else, but as Lola. Lola is a lonely high school girl. She's sort of awkward and has a very unusual relationship with her overly loving dad. And she has a crush on a boy, and so she asks him to the prom, and he says no. And Lola does not take no for an answer. She kidnaps him. She tortures him with the help of her father in a night that's like a sort of nightmarish prom that takes place in her house. And it starts there, and then it goes crazier and crazier and crazier. But what makes it so damn good is how good Robin McLeavy is as Lola. It's just an incredibly memorable performance. One of my favorite performances in a horror movie. And that would be The Loved Ones. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
This year's Queen of the Dances, Lola Stone.
Love her.
Let me know what you think. Have you seen these? Did you love them? Did you hate them? What would your list be like? Can you recommend some to me? Because I'm always looking for great stuff. Thanks.